Next up, we're going down under with CopperCorp. They released some interesting visuals last week. Was it this week? Last week? This week. Steve Swatton for CopperCorp.
All right, thanks. Slightly different from Tim's. We're actually in the middle of a drilling program. Unfortunately, the drill has broken down, and it looks like we're going to have to be out of service for a while. But this presentation that I'm giving today is a little bit of a hodgepodge because I've been on the road for 6 weeks now. Started in Tasmania, and I'm finishing up here. And unfortunately, I didn't have enough time last night to make it 12 minutes. So I'm going to flick through a bunch of the different diagrams that you have in front of you. And don't be annoyed with me. I'm just going to flick through them because they're not important. What I'm trying to do is to explain to you what these visuals were and why Tasmania, because I've realized that in all of the talks that I've done, not too many people are aware of the potential of Tasmania. Can I have a show of hands? Anybody been to Tasmania? Yeah, a few. Okay, that's good. That's 4 in 6 weeks. Yeah, so what we've done is we've drilled into what's called an iron oxide copper gold. And this cross-section that you have here, I'll talk around it a little bit because it's the most important thing. We just, what was it, 3 days ago, we announced that we hit these broad zones of mineralization quite deep within a magnetic anomaly. What you're seeing there in blue is a magnetic anomaly underneath an adit that we sampled 31 meters at 1.5% copper and 0.8 gold. We drilled underneath it with the first hole, and no big surprise, we got some more of the same sort of juice underneath the adit. But then we decided, and this was largely due to Doug Cohen, who's on the board, who's one of the co-discoverers in Oyu Tolgoi. He said, "What you really didn't actually look at the mag anomaly, did you?" And I said, "Well, no, but I'm keeping an eye on costs here. I'm trying to save the company money. It looks like, that's it." He said, "No, drill right through the body of the magnetic anomaly." So if you see JD002 there, what actually happened was the drill was going a bit steep. So we had to what's called wedge off that one so we could get across the anomaly. So we drilled pretty similar to what we had in JD001 on the edge of at the bottom of JD002. So we wedged off, and then we continued drilling, and we had a whole bunch of nothing. And then when we came through the other side, we have roughly 100 meters of visible copper. So I mentioned to the TSX that quite a few people knew this, so they forced, well, they didn't force, but they obliged me to put out a news release this week. I don't know if this is a discovery or it's going to be significant or it's going to be somewhere else on our property, but the point is that 2 weeks ago I had no knowledge of this. Obviously, I sign up for these things months in advance, and just this week our share price increased 50%. We're about a 10 to 15 market cap. When I was in Stockholm on the Friday, it was 9 million. It's now 15 or somewhere around that state. Yes, this sort of thing is of interest, and it's of interest to a major. I used to work for BHP for a long time. I never came across Tim, I don't think, but I heard his name. And I was in the business development side. We looked for safe jurisdictions around the world. We were looking at Tasmania as well at the time, but we were very concentrated on Olympic Dam. This is some of the characters that are in our company. The ones in the ring you might have heard of. John Robbins is a large shareholder. Craig Roberts is a large shareholder. And Doug Cohen is the guy that I was mentioning to you. He's probably one of the most famous living geologists at the moment, and he was a discoverer. He was the one who pushed me to keep drilling through this magnet anomaly. This is what we're discussing. This is from 2 weeks ago. And if you're any geologist in there, will be going, "That's pretty good looking stuff." So the dark yellow is the copper. The kind of bronzy is the pyrite, which is iron. And it's the orangey rock is completely altered. It's actually a dacite rhyolite, which has been completely altered and overprinted with magnetite. It's exactly what you want to look for in an iron oxide copper gold. And just to show we got more of it, this was probably about 80 meters of this mineralization we had. And unfortunately, as I mentioned earlier, the drill has broken. Looks like it's unfixable for now. So we're going to have to kind of look at our navel and decide what we're going to do next here. Just a little bit about the company. We obviously we had a little bit of activity. That's what I've circled it with the in red there. We had 3.6 million in cash. And we have 2,000 square kilometers in Tasmania. We are the largest landowner in Tasmania, and we've tried to concentrate on all of the copper gold belts. My previous employment with Rio Tinto, I worked in northern Sweden, and I saw some very strong analogies with Kiruna and the Kiruna district. Doug Kerwin also agreed with me that there's something of interest because he looked for Robert Friedland at Savage River, which is a very large iron mine there. There's 4 operating mines in Tasmania. There's a 5th one going to be in production by, well, they're talking about it, Sibanye, which is Mount Lyell, which is the one I'm going to continue to talk about. And I'll try and make sure I have a few minutes for questions afterwards. But I'm going to flick through some of these really quickly. This is our, we raised about 12 million to date. We've drilled in 2 different locations. And we currently have, what, 86 million shares out. Fairly tight structure. But when we did the IPO 2 years ago, the copper price also went for Burton. And we've suffered as a result of the fact that we have 2 assets in the ground that we have. One of them is we put an internal resource on. I don't really want to talk too much about that. But that one is getting pretty deep at the moment. But the one that we're drilling, the one that I showed you just earlier, is a completely different location next to a 3 million ton copper mine, which has been mined for over 100 years. At the moment, it's just under care and maintenance, but it's going to go back into production. Still 1 million tons of copper there. And it's also got 3 million ounces. There's probably about 1 million ounces left. Only thing I wanted to point out on this one is that our shares traded are incredibly increased this year, 2024. We're doing a lot of volume per day, about 500,000, 300,000 at the moment. Tasmania is a kind of interesting spot. Not a lot of people know much about Tasmania. They probably know the Tasmanian Devil, the kids' cartoons, and various other things about Tasmania, which are kind of on the environmental side. But in fact, the powerhouse, the thing that drives Tasmania is the mining. The mining represents 60% of the revenue of the state. Agriculture, viticulture is actually quite famous for Pinot Noir. But I don't want to concentrate too much on the advantage of Tasmania because I've only got limited time. But suffice it to say that the resource minister and myself were on national TV about 4 weeks ago talking about the importance of mining. I mean, you don't get that too often. I'm pretty sure you're not going to get that in BC. Which is where I live. The areas in the checkered area or the dashed area are where we're allowed to explore. The rest of it, we're not allowed to explore, and it's fair enough. I mean, there's one area in the northwest where there's 4 operating mines within 50 kilometers. One's the largest tin mine in the southern hemisphere. We've got Rosebery, which is owned by Chinese. It's a 52 million ton multi-commodity mine. Look, I could go on about the mines that have been done and the ones that are currently in operation, but with a population of 500,000 people, an island the size of Ireland, it's a significant contributor to the economy of Tasmania. So I don't want to really go, as I said, I'm going to flick through a few of these, and this was for a lecture that I was doing in the Philippines for some kids, and it was kind of interesting. I had no idea that now the depth of discovery is going down to 600 meters. And when we're looking for IOCG, sometimes, if you know the geology of Olympic Dam and these, some of them can be quite deep, but they're also quite profitable in the fact that the copper grades are high, but they also have a bunch of other things like uranium, cobalt, rare earths, and we've discovered rare earths as well. And these are the number of discoveries per year. And again, I don't want to dwell on it too much. The fact is we can't hardly find anything anymore. I'm a geologist myself. And the heyday, I'd say, of the geologists was in the 80s. Maybe 90s as well. We were making all those discoveries and on the Stuart Shelf for these IOCG type deposits, and also the head grades are going incredibly down as well. It's going down to 0.4. When I was doing my field work days, it was up at 1%. So something of the 0.3 is of value. We've got 2 major belts. We've got 2,000 square kilometers. The one in the light blue, I'm not going to really talk about too much. It's the one on the right-hand side because I've only got 5.5 minutes left. So I'm going to flick through a few slides here. Suffice it to say, we've got a large amount of ground. That's what a porphyry looks like on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side is IOCGs. Porphyries are well known and easier to explore for, I would argue. IOCGs, you're actually, most of the time, wiser in hindsight. I'll flick through this one. This is all of the IOCGs of the world. Just on the top left there, that's the size of Olympic Dam. 9.5 billion tons at 0.8 copper and 0.31 gold. That's significant. It's huge. It's the fourth largest mine in the world, fourth largest copper mine in the world, and the largest uranium mine in the world. Some of these can be incredible. One thing I wanted to point out on this one about Olympic Dam was it was actually, there's a mistake on there. It was discovered in 1976, not 86, 1,600 meters away, 1,600. And I know the geologist who was part of that program. RD1 was of interest. The next 8 holes, had absolutely nothing in them at all, and they're close by. The RD10 was drilled off the end of a track for no particular reason, and they made the discovery. I think it was 200 meters of 2% mineralization. So I'm going to flick through here simply because we are a bit short of time, and I want to talk about the most exciting bit that we have. We have several targets on site. We've got another one called Hides, and on the internet it's been talked about quite a bit. But the point is that we have all the pinkish ground on strike from the Mount Lyell mine. And every one of these stars and green dots is an anomaly. We haven't had the opportunity to explore for them all, but they all have been lying relatively vacant now for 30 years. And with this latest drill hole that we have intersected, we're drilling a magnetic anomaly. So the right-hand side, the big blue blob, we come through the other side of it, and you've seen this one before. We're now right at the bottom, and look, at the moment I'm garnering a lot of attention from various different parties, but also I haven't even had time to read my emails because it was just a couple of days ago and been on the phone quite a bit. But we have these other targets which are closer to Mount Lyell. Linda Zone, Duke Zone we're drilling, Hyde Zone needs to be drilled, and on that one there was an old BHP discovery, if you like, at the surface, where you had I think it is there, 23 meters at 0.8% copper, never been followed up. And so I've got some talk about what we're going to be doing in the future, but it suffices to say, I mean, we've got probably about 75 meters of this mineralization. We stopped in mineralization. The drill is broken down. We'll probably continue again in January because it's now the summer in Tasmania. And I think I'll leave it at that and see if we've got any questions. I can see I've got a couple of minutes.
Yeah, no, I'll start with the first question. When can we expect assays for the 2 holes? Or
2
the
to
holes
3
with
weeks.
the
Yeah,
wedge?
we haven't. Actually, we're still cutting some of the core, but
Okay.
we've already sent some of it. So I'd say 3 weeks.
2 to 3 weeks?
Yeah, we're actually sitting behind Renison Tin Mine in the process for and there's one lab in northern Tasmania,
And everything.
and there's 4 operating mines. So
Right.
we're the poor cousin when it comes to.
And what grade range are you looking at for like a significant IOCG discovery, ideally?
I would say 0.6 to 1.2.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions from the audience?
Well, if there isn't, I'm in a booth over there 6. I'll be having a few beers tonight. Okay, we'll go back to you. But I'd rather talk one-on-one with all of this because it's kind of live stuff that's going on. It's quite exciting. But yeah, go ahead. What's the question? Very good question. Yes, there is. So
Instead of which? Sorry.
yeah, instead of the ASX.
Oh, the ASX.
Yeah,
right.
yeah. Why on the TSX? And look, a simple answer is that when the company was being put together, and Doug Kerwin, the geologist I was mentioning, he's an Australian guy who knows Ross Beatty. Ross Beatty took the first major private placement, and then when Ross Beatty got involved, everybody else wanted to get involved, and so it became like a herd mentality. And so we have John Robbins. Look, we have some of the bigger names that are on the Vancouver side of it get involved, and therefore the gravitas is we're over there. But it's interesting. I've been talking to European investors this week, and they're quite happy that we're on the Toronto Exchange because it's very difficult for European investors to trade on the ASX because of the time.
For some retail, it is.
Yeah.
Yes. 30 seconds. Last question, Steve. You got quite a bit of cash left. What's the burn?
3.6. Yeah, but
what's
it
the
would
burn
not
rate?
be. So what we're looking for is a joint venture partner for the one that was on the light blue on the left-hand side, which is called the AMC. But I'm I would like to be drilling our own one.
Yeah.
We have enough cash to be drilling it ourselves, but
Right.
we'll see if we can get a price reevaluation going forward so that we can actually maybe raise some money early next year.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, thank
If
you.
anybody has any questions for Steve, you're in room
6.
Okay.
And I'll be having a beer tonight downstairs.
Yes,
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Cheers. Thanks.